it's definitely going to be one of the biggest cases that has been brought to a Canadian court in Canada.
Tonight, class action lawsuit documents are signed by unverified day school survivors.
I just informed my colleagues in the Conservative caucus that I will be resigning as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada.
We have reaction to Andrew Scheer's resignation.
We're hoping to bring these social legacies to the Arctic Winter Games moving forward.
And the countdown is on. The Arctic Winter Games are coming to Whitehorse in 2020. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. We begin tonight with a new development on a story we broke here on APTN National News. There's a new class action lawsuit underway to recognize former students abused at schools who were left out of other federal settlements. As APTN Investigates discovered, there are more than 680 institutions left out. Brittany Gio was there at the historic signing.
So I'll get Ron to sign this, and that's it. It's done.
Well, the very first part of the first part has now been completed, yes. I agree.
It was a historic day for survivors of Duck Bay School and the more than 680 other schools left out of any federal settlement.
We're here today to hire a law firm to move our case forward for justice for the day school students that are not represented across Canada.
Abraham Parenteau and George Monroe have been fighting for recognition. The men say they suffered horrific abuse at the Northern Manitoba school.
I feel pretty good about it because I think we are on the right track and we're moving forward with this, with what we did here this evening. We signed up with Steve Cooper from Alberta.
The pair were the subject of a recent APTN Investigates documentary, Broken Circle.
It was just a vicious circle of abuse from the day school to the reform school to the sanatorium. Wherever you were sent, you were abused.
The same thing that happens with the Indian day schools, the residential schools, we were treated the same way.
They formed the Unverified Day School Survivors Society and asked Vicki Klein to join.
You know, we're not just one entity. We're a whole group of people who need to be recognized for the wrong that was done to us.
Lawyer Steve Cooper flew to Winnipeg just to sign them to a proposed class action lawsuit.
It's definitely going to be one of the biggest cases that has been brought to a Canadian court in Canada.
Details of the suit are developing. Brittany Gio, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Big news out of Ottawa today, although it may not have come as a big surprise. Andrew Scheer, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, has resigned. JB Pashagumscum has that story.
The Saskatchewan MP decided to step down as leader to spend more time with his family.
I just informed my colleagues in the Conservative caucus that I will be resigning as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. And I've asked the Conservative Party National Council, I will be asking the Conservative Party National Council to immediately begin the process of organizing a leadership election. No.
Scheer wasn't the most popular politician among Indigenous leaders. He was criticized for not listening to Indigenous leadership and for not intervening when Conservative senators killed Indigenous rights legislation in the Senate earlier this year. Justin Trudeau thanks Scheer for his service.
I very much wish him all the very, very best in his next and exciting steps, whatever they be there here in the House or beyond. I want to thank him deeply for his service to Canada on behalf of all Canadians, on behalf of all Liberals, and I know there are many more conversations to have. But thank you. Andrew, for the work you're doing.
Nova Scotia Liberal MP Jaime Batiste echoed that sentiment, but has expectations for the new Conservative leader.
I wish Mr. Scheer the best of luck in whatever his future endeavours are. For now, I hope that all sides can get around doing stuff for Indigenous rights, no matter what party they are. I think that it's a part of the biggest part of what we need to focus on Canadians is reconciliation, and I hope that whoever the new party leader may be, that it would be it's something that they'll have as one of their priorities.
NDP MP Leah Gazan said the Conservatives need to rethink their positions on issues like implementing the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
All decisions were shared decisions by the Conservative caucus. They voted in bloc against Bill C-262. I'm hoping moving forward that they'll begin making decisions to honour minimum human rights standards for Indigenous peoples in this country.
Scheer said he will stay on as the MP for the Regina Capel riding and as party leader until the Conservatives elect a new one. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
History was also made in Ottawa today when a Mi'kmaq MP became the first person in the House of Commons to ask a question in his language. Jaime Batiste, who was first elected in October, now chairs the Liberal Indigenous Caucus, used his first opportunity to speak in the legislature by asking his colleague for an update on the government's Indigenous Languages legislation.
Emudig don Deloidemwek, United Nations year uchit ulnuiz ultik. Akejidu, debluda on edek, uchit abonamadamug, don Deli ulnuiz ultik. Gidu bibanimk, Maui SPBdeo, Gabelnul, Maliaptagal, Ulnuegadil, Dali abonamadisnu, Nut quality deo, don Deli ulnuiz ultida, Yapchu.
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Walalindan Delbi Banigasin. We are implementing the Indigenous Languages Act in collaboration with those who know best how to revitalize their languages, Indigenous peoples and teachers. And we're doing so by providing $337 million over the next 5 years for Indigenous languages and $1,500 per year for each K-12 First Nations student as part of the new co-developed education funding policy. This government is firm in its resolve to support Indigenous languages.
Canada's Minister of Transportation says his department is watching the price of flying in the north carefully. Marc Garneau was responding to concerns that the cost of a one-way ticket in Nunavut in the Northwest Territories has almost quadrupled. The federal government approved the merger of First Air and Canadian North in June, despite concerns raised by the Competition Bureau of Canada. Garneau says they're monitoring their operations.
So we spent quite a bit of time looking at this merger, which is First Air and Canadian North, and so did the Competition Bureau. And in the end, we made the decision that it was in the public interest. But we attached a number of conditions to it. Those conditions had to do with pricing of tickets, had to do with scheduling, it had to do with the capacity, it had to do with transparency, serving particular locations, and those conditions are binding conditions, and we are watching over the respect of those conditions, and if we feel that those conditions are not being respected, we will step in.
And you can find more on this story from our Parliament Hill reporter Brett Forrester over on our website, aptnnews.ca. In British Columbia, salmon season is over, but the Big Bar landslide on the Fraser River continues to threaten wild fish, and the First Nations Leadership Council are demanding that the federal and provincial governments declare a state of emergency and remove the remaining obstruction within 60 days. That massive landslide was discovered in late June. Boulders the size of two-story houses crashed down a cliff, blocking hundreds of thousands of salmon from getting to their spawning beds. And although some natural passage was eventually restored, First Nations say next year's salmon runs are still at risk if the government doesn't act quickly while the water is low.
Currently, I want to see what they're doing and what their plan is. And I want to be able to look at it and assess it and say, is that enough? Or if it's not enough, then I step in as a chief of my community. We're the caretaker area of tidal lands where all the spawning beds are. And right now, just not a very big lump of rock that could be blasted and moved. In a month, that thing could be passable, could be a mile wide.
A proposed natural gas project in northern BC is losing a major backer. Chevron has announced plans to sell their 50% stake in Kitimat LNG. That move looks like a setback to Canada's natural gas sector. Kitimat LNG, a joint project by Chevron and Woodside Petroleum, wants to extract gas from northeast BC and then send it by pipeline to a terminal in Kitimat. Benefit agreements have been made with 16 nations along the pipeline route, including the Highland Nation in Kitimat. Kitimat Mayor Phil Gurmuth was surprised by Chevron's move, but is optimistic as stakeholders seek new partners.
Kitimat LNG is still a great opportunity, and we look forward to another proponent seeing the value in it and hopefully buying into it. It's clearly, both LNG Canada and Kitimat LNG here would be the two lowest greenhouse gas emissions large LNG facilities anywhere on Earth.
For some 350 years, some version of the Northwest Company has been trading fur in Canada. Like the 1670 version, the Governor and Company of Adventurers of England turned into Hudson's Bay. Citing a 70% price drop, the company said this week they were no longer going to buy fur. Today they announced a deal with the Fur Harvesters Auction, the largest wild fur auction house in the world. The current price of fur won't change in spite of international fur prices being in the middle of a 3-year slump, due in part to a slowdown in China and Russia's economy. But at least the company will still be buying fur. Most of the Northwest Company stores are in remote northern communities where a higher percentage of people trap animals to make a living. Coming up, the countdown to the 2020 Arctic Winter Games has begun. But first, a look at what's in store after tonight's newscast.
I'm Todd Lamoran, and here's who we'll have on Nation to Nation tonight. NDP MP Charlie Angus talks about his successful motion in Parliament yesterday. He asked Trudeau to call off the lawyers and compensate First Nations children caught up in the child welfare system. As well, the new NAFTA agreement has been finalized. Wayne Garnons-Williams will tell us how it'll benefit First Nations and future intertribal trade. And we meet Janica Atwin, the new Green Party MP from New Brunswick. She's not Indigenous herself, but has deep ties to the local Maliseet Nation. You'll see why right after the national news.
Here's a look at your Friday weather forecast. Sunny and -6 for St. John's, +1 for Halifax. -16 in Nain, 14 below for Cartwright. +1 in Montreal, -5 in Saguenay with snow. -6 for Chibougamau and snow. +4 for Toronto, London, Sarnia and Windsor. -6 and snow for Thunder Bay and Wawa. 29 below for Churchill under sunny skies. 30 below in Puckatawagan. -16 with snow for Winnipeg, Gimli and Brandon. -12 and snow in Regina and Estevan, Saskatoon as well. -34 in Uranium City, 1 degree warmer in Stony Rapids. Welcome back. In less than 100 days, the 2020 Arctic Winter Games will open in the Yukon, and they'll be celebrating their 50th anniversary. The high-profile circumpolar competition has 21 sports, and we'll see around 2,000 participants traveling to Whitehorse from northern regions all over the globe. Inclusion and reconciliation are a big part of the 2020 Arctic Winter Games, and organizers are creating legacies that will be carried on to future events.
We're hoping to bring these social legacies to the Arctic Winter Games moving forward. The first piece is the Reconciliation Action Plan, which is the first time that's ever been done for an Arctic Winter Games. And we signed a memorandum of understanding now with 4 Yukon First Nations, as well as the Council of Yukon First Nations, which has never been done before. So we hope that that's something that's done all the time moving forward when hosting not just the Arctic Winter Games, but any large sporting events.
Looking forward to those games. APTN has been covering them since we first went on air, and that tradition will continue next year in the Yukon. Joining us now is APTN's Yukon reporter, Chris McIntyre. Tell us a bit more about what to expect. He joins us from our Whitehorse bureau. Chris, thanks for joining us. The Arctic Winter Games start March 15th. What's the city of Whitehorse doing to prepare?
Thanks, Dennis. With less than 100 days until the Games, it's basically decision-making time. Organizers are printing publication, making signage, they are finding out the final numbers of athletes arriving, and they are finalizing schedule times. They're putting tickets on sale, and organizers are using the term heads for beds, which basically means they're trying to find beds for all these heads that are coming to visit our beautiful city.
So what teams are coming to Whitehorse, and will we be seeing any new sporting events this time around?
So the teams participating are from the Yukon, they're from Northwest Territories, Nunavut, Alaska, Alberta North, they're from Greenland. We have some teams from Sapmi, which is a region of Finland and Norway, and Yamal, which is a region of Russia. Now, I'm not too sure if there are new events per se, but I do know that the sporting events are split into 4 different categories. To name a few from each category, there's the traditional sport, which is all the spectators' favorite, the Dene Games, which include finger pull, hand games, and pole push. There are the Nordic sports like cross-country skiing and snowboarding. There are the indoor sports, which include basketball and badminton, and ice sports, which is hockey and curling.
Sure do love the traditional ones. This is the 50th anniversary of the Arctic Games. Are there any special events planned?
Absolutely, Dennis. There are special performers that are going to be performing all throughout the week. They'll be doing a documentary, taking a historical look at the past 50 games and talking with well-known participants like Jordan Tutu, who participated in the games and then, as everybody knows, went on to become an NHL player. There'll be a 50th anniversary reception during the week of the games. And the 2020 Games is particularly special because a memorandum of understanding has been signed with 4 Yukon First Nations along with the CYFN, which is the Council of Yukon First Nations. This is the first of its kind and has never happened before, so it's pretty important. That means that the Arctic Winter Games will be including Yukon First Nations when events like this are hosted in our city.
Well, looking forward to it. It's a fun time. Chris, appreciate you coming on and speaking with us about it.
It's always a pleasure, Dennis.
Can't wait to see the finger pull. There's a new deal on the table for Mi'kmaq fish harvesters in the Maritimes. It promises a moderate livelihood. But what does that actually mean? And what does it say about Canada's take on treaty rights? Trina Roach finds out in Living Treaties Part 2, which airs tomorrow night on APTN Investigates. Here's a preview.
I didn't want our women to feel like they had to wait for a man or they had to wait for the government. So I wanted to kind of open up that door so women could see a woman and say, hey, my sister's doing that. And if she can do it, I can do it.
An inherent right, a treaty right, upheld by the Supreme Court of Canada in a decision that sparked conflict. But also success. 20 years later, unresolved questions are on the table, tensions are rising again, and rights are at stake.
If you're putting them in a box, how are you addressing it? You're not.
It's 20 years later, and they're still trying to delay, treaty access and moderate livelihood.
The stories are long, the stories are deep, the trauma is deep.
can watch that entire episode tomorrow night right here after the APTN National News. Well, time for another quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Here's the rest of Friday's weather forecast. Sunny and minus 33 for Fort Chipewyan. Minus 9 and snow in Medicine Hat. Sunny skies and 9 below for Lethbridge. Plus 7 and rain in Victoria in Tofino. 8 above with showers for Vancouver. Minus 18 and snow in Fort Nelson. Minus 1 with snow for Prince George. 29 below in Old Crow. Minus 5 for Whitehorse. Minus 21 in snow for Fort Liard and Trout Lake. 31 below in Yellowknife. Minus 21 in Sax Harbor and Inuvik. 22 below with snow for Repulse Bay. Minus 27 in Whale Cove and Arviette. Minus 22 in Clyde River. 20 below in Joe Haven. Welcome back. First Nation street and hip-hop artist named Q-Rock was in Sault Ste. Marie recently holding workshops with local high school students. He's teaching them all about hip-hop culture and its First Nation influences. And a big part of it is street art. CTV's Nicole D. Donato has his story.
Originally from Nipissing First Nation, Q-Rock is an internationally recognized Anishinaabe hip-hop muralist. He's currently based out of Toronto, but he's also lived in the Bronx, where he had the chance to meet and work with well-known breakdancing crews.
I grew up very traditionally in my Anishinaabe culture. Art is a way of our lifestyle. I'm a powwow dancer, I'm a grass dancer. So I just grew up this way of lifestyle, like, learning geometry through art forms, and it's one of the ways that my culture is passed on from generation to generation.
He's sharing his culture and knowledge of these art forms with high school students in Sault Ste. Marie. One way he's doing that is by helping them create murals to transform this stairwell.
I feel like I'm a bridge from where I've traveled to the communities that I go into. And I try to offer the safe passage for people to have just the know-how and the experience that I've been gaining while I travel.
Getting to have something that I actually worked on up and being recognized is really amazing.
Just the way he's been teaching it is something that you wouldn't be taught in just regular school.
This is part of a larger effort by the city to encourage young people to take pride and ownership in their community. Organizers say it's also a way for students to get real-world experience in the art sector.
It's also those connections that they could partner with these artists that have kind of a foothold in an industry or sector that can help them next level their careers as well.
Q-Rock is also offering up advice for students.
Don't sabotage yourself, be your best friend, and love the process. Don't worry about making mistakes.
Solid advice there from Q-Rock. That's your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. Stick around. Nation to Nation with Todd Lamarand is up next with your roundup of this week's political highlights and lowlights. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.